Here's another great question that comes up. Do I have to make repairs? I get this question a lot from sellers. I actually get it a lot from buyers too as they're going through the buying process. So let's walk through this and talk about what kind of repairs might or might not be required as a result of the home inspection process. And this is applicable to the greater southern New Jersey area. Let's start with the basics. Most real estate companies in this area use a standard templated agreement of sale or contract with some standard verbiage. It's provided by the New Jersey Association of Realtors. In that contract, the buyer in a traditional sale has approximately 2 weeks to conduct any inspections that are deemed necessary. So here's the three basic ones. Almost everybody will do a full home inspection, a termite or wood destroying insect inspection, and a radon inspection. What's radon? Stay tuned, it's coming. So the home inspector will come out and he or she will spend a couple hours at the house and they're gonna look for defects, right? And then they're gonna give a whole big report and they're gonna make, unfortunately, oftentimes a 5-year-old house look like it's in terrible shape, but that's just how things read on paper. Typically, it's not actually the case. Termite inspection or wood destroying insect, where basically there are two kinds of houses in New Jersey in this area. There are homes that had termites, and then there's homes that will have termites. So very, very common to see some type of wood destroying insect. Termites very common, powder post beetles, carpenter bees, and there are some other ones. So, and then there's radon. If a home has a basement, very often the home inspector will recommend that the buyer gets a radon inspection as an add-on to their home inspection process. Radon is a naturally occurring gas deep below the Earth's surface. You would never know if it existed in your house. It does exist in lots of different neighborhoods throughout southern New Jersey. You can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't see it. You would have no idea if your house has a high radon level, but the EPA says that if it comes back over 4.0, then it should be corrected. Kind of a good news, bad news thing. The good news is it's really not that difficult to correct it. However, could get a little expensive. So in this area, in my experience, it's typically $1,500 to $2,000 to correct it. Not insanely expensive in the scheme of selling a house, but it does need to get corrected. Okay, so sellers always ask me, like, what do I have to fix on this report? I have this conversation several times a week. I have the same or similar question posed a different way from buyers, often several times a week. Well, what can we ask the seller to fix? So here's the crucial point. There's a fundamental difference between a defect and something that could be a little bit better, right? So for instance, if there is a leak in the roof, defect, right? Here's something that comes up a lot on home inspection reports. How about when the home inspector suggests that there are extensions put on the downspouts for your gutter system instead of it just kind of like terminating right at the end, at the foot of the base of the house? They like to see you put like a 6, 8, 10 foot extension on there. Makes sense, right? Divert the water further away from the house. End of the day, water is evil. So we try to keep it under control as homeowners, right? But putting extensions on the downspout is not an actual defect. It's perfectly acceptable the way it is. If there's no evidence of moisture, it's not like hurting the house, but it could be better, right? So that's where you start to get into these areas of what's a true defect and what could actually be improved. So a lot of the things, and every home inspector is different, they're all going to kind of use different software and present it in a different way, but it's important to look at those details. So from a seller standpoint, here's a technicality. The contract reads that the home is being sold as is. But here's the reality. The buyer has a right to do these inspections, and if those inspections yield defects, and they always do, there's always something, there's always some things that are defective that need to be corrected. If the seller chooses not to make those repairs, the buyer has a right to walk away. So it depends on the emotions of that particular buyer too. Maybe they have a brother who's a contractor and they're not as worried. Maybe they're super nervous first-time home buyers and they've scrimped and saved and they're using every dime to get into this house and they can't spend another penny once they move in until they're living there for a while. So you never really know. But at the end of the day, if it is a legitimate defect and we don't fix it and the buyer walks away, that's right, it's going to come up again on the next home inspection report. So we'll probably have to deal with it. So, things like structural cracks we see, walls that are bowing, double taps in a circuit breaker, that's not good. Outlets that have open grounds or reversed polarity, that's a big one, right? We see little leaks in roofs around plumbing booths. And if a lot of this sounds like gibberish, you don't even know what I'm saying, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Every once in a while, a seller may get a proactive home inspection before they put it on the market. Not a bad idea, but typically the buyer will still get their own, and no two home inspectors are the same, so they may find a lot of the same stuff, but there may be a few things that there are differences of opinion on. So I always recommend to sellers, when we get a punch list from a buyer after home inspection, let's look at the list. Let's get a contractor or contractors in, licensed professionals to take a look. Let's see which ones are valid defects. Maybe they all are. Who knows? And let's try to differentiate between valid defects and what's actually an improvement to the house. Part of that home inspector's job is to make sure that you are familiar with your property that you're purchasing. So they're going to point out all kinds of great stuff to you during the home inspection. So I think that's like the gist of it. So the point, even though it's kind of listed as is, or written as is on the contract, the reality is if there are true defects in the house, we're going to have to deal with it one way or another. And then the last note having to do with the termite or wood destroying insect, typically easily treatable if there's evidence of termites. And I bet you didn't know this. You can't see termites. Termites don't like the light. They actually work on the inside of the wood. Pretty nasty little insect. There is other evidence like mud tunnels and tubes that you can see that know that they're in the area, and certainly if a piece of lumber is soft or hollow, that means that they've gotten in there and done some damage. So it would be in a traditional sale the seller's responsibility to have the house treated and certified accordingly by a licensed company. Now the wood typically also has to get fixed too. Often we see that in crawl spaces and basements. So something that has to get dealt with. Again, if a seller chooses not to deal with it, as a buyer, you have a right to walk away in a traditional sale, but most sellers are going to take care of that. It's just the way it is. We just don't know, right? Do a home inspection of my house and I'm sure there'll be surprises too. All right, thanks.